Welcome everyone to another tier list. This is going to be a fascinating tier list as we're going to rank the Kanto Pokemon. Let's go. First up we have Bulbasaur. Now Bulbasaur is one of the starter Pokemon in Kanto. Probably Squirtle and Charmander preferred by most people. Bulbasaur in terms of power, he tends to struggle a bit. So based on that information, he is cool and whatnot. Like he's one of Ash's Pokemon in the first season of Pokemon. But for me, Bulbasaur is a C tier. Next up on our list is Ivysaur. Of course, Bulbasaur evolves into Ivysaur. Now, Ivysaur, I think, looks a lot more cooler in designs, a wee bit stronger than Bulbasaur. For me, Ivysaur will go solidly into the B tier. Unfortunately, in the series too, I felt Ash's Pokemon should have evolved, and it would have been cool to see like Ivysaur and then Venusaur on his team, and of course other Pokemon that he had evolve into the different forms. But for me, Ivysaur's a solid B tier in Kanto, for me. Next up on our list is Venusaur. Now, I like Venusaur pretty much when it gets to this stage after evolving a couple of times. It's got a few cool moves like Solar Beam. It has pretty much really cool grass moves as well at the time, like usually Razor Leaf, Vine Whipper, part of its arsenal. Yeah, wish I saw Venusaur a lot more in the series. But yeah, Venusaur for me will be on the A tier list. Next up on our list is Charmander. Now, Charmander is my favourite starter out of the three that you have in Kanto. Obviously, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. Charmander is a fire type with very decent moves to start off with compared to Bulbasaur. For me, that means it's a bit higher rated than Bulbasaur, and for me is on the B tier list. Next up on our list is Charmeleon. In the show, Charmeleon starts to not take orders from Ash, does his own thing. Pretty much a rebel. Pretty cool fire type in my book, and for that reason, I will give him the A tier status. I quite like Charmeleon, and he's quite strong too. I'm basing this on strength and likability for people that are wondering. Next up on the list is the iconic Charizard. Pretty much an easy one for me. He is definitely S tier. Charizard has some iconic battles through the first season, and he is pretty much a rebel as well. He ignores Ash on multiple occasions. In fact, cost Ash the place in the next round of the first Pokemon Championships in Kanto. Charizard is popular across all the world, of course, in the base set booster boxes in the TCG. Charizard can fetch at the moment between $350,000 to $500,000 US dollars. So definitely an S tier for me. Next up on the list is Squirtle. I like Squirtle as well. I think he's cool. I like the old Squirtle squad in the first season of Kanto. Squirtle has some really decent moves. He's very good, of course, in the Game Boy games to get through the first gym against Brock. Obviously, Brock runs rock types and Rock's weak against water. Squirtle has some really cool moves that he gets throughout the show as well. In terms of power, he's pretty much on par with Charmander at the start, so we'll give him the B tier status here. Next up on the list is Wartortle, pretty much the evolved form of Squirtle. In terms of this list, I'm going to put Wartortle on the B tier. He's a wee bit of an improvement on Squirtle, but I don't think when this list is fully complete, he'll match up with the S tier and A tier Pokemon that I put here. So, yeah, B tier for Wartortle for me. Next up on the list is the iconic Blastoise. Blastoise is simply awesome. Love his moveset as well. He's got like Hydro Pump, Bubble Beam, Water Gun, Skull Bash. He's got heaps of good moves up his arsenal. He's on the same tier as Charizard for me. He's just simply iconic, and in terms of likability, very liked. Next up on this list is Caterpie. Now, Caterpie is going to be rated a D tier for me. Like Ash's first caught Pokemon and whatnot in the Kanto series, but still it has basic moves like Tackle and String Shot. It's not going to really threaten in terms of power. It's got a wee bit of likability, I suppose, but yeah, for me, definitely a D tier. Next up on this list is Metapod. Now, Metapod, I had to create a new tier for it. I don't like the Pokemon. Only knows the move Harden, and Harden only increases the defense. And I remember a very bizarre episode on Kanto when two Metapods were battling and they're only using the move Harden. I don't know why on earth that was a thing. But yeah, definitely for me, Metapod is in the E tier in terms of power, likability, and it can easily be crushed by all these Pokemon above it. Even the pre-evolved form of Caterpie could probably beat Metapod in a fight. Next up on this list is Butterfree. I like Butterfree as a Pokemon. Like Butterfree, for me in games, I use like status effects like Sleep Powder, Stun Spore, Poison Powder, like moves that could affect Pokemon that I was battling, and it helped my team overcome other teams. Could learn some Psychic moves back in the day too. It was quite decent. In terms of power and likability, it's definitely for me on the C tier list. Next up on the list is Weedle. At least Weedle is better than Caterpie in terms of a moveset, like it has Poison Sting, which for trainers in the early Game Boy games, especially in a wild encounter and in a Pokemon battle, Weedle could be a bit of a nuisance and poison your Pokemon. Of course, you may not even have antidote at that time. Your Pokemon faint after a battle. Yeah, Weedle for me is still on the D tier, but it's a bit better than Caterpie in my book. Next up on the list is Kakuna. Kakuna is in the same tier as Metapod, has Harden, and doesn't do much else for me. Next up on the list is Beedrill. Now, Beedrill, for me, is a very vicious Pokemon. Has some very nasty bug-type moves. And those pincers and the stinger look very, very nasty. But in terms of power, for me, it's on the same tier as Bulbasaur and the Butterfree at the moment. So we'll put Beedrill there. Next up on the list is Pidgey. Now, Pidgey's a good Pokemon to catch early on, of course, in terms of getting the ability to use Fly on it and getting around the map pretty quickly. Moveset's reasonably okay. In terms of strength, it's probably on the same tier as the Bulbasaur, Butterfree, and Beedrill that we've got at the moment on this list. So for that reason, Pidgey goes into the C tier. Next up on the list is Pidgeotto. Now, Pidgeotto is a Pokemon Ash caught in Kanto. And, yeah, decent flying type. It's got some decent moves. In terms of where it rates, I would put this into the B tier for me. In terms of likability, very useful flying type, and quite fast and evasive Pokemon. Pidgeot. Pretty much the final evolution form of the Pidgeotto line. Pidgeot is very, very quick. Aerial Ace is a move that I liked putting on Pidgeot in the games as well, so that move did a lot of damage to most Pokemon. Yeah, for me, Pidgeot doesn't feature too much in the show. Of course, Ash lets it be free and protect the Pokemon whatever at the time. Yeah, Pidgeot for me, definitely an A tier for me. Next up on the list is Rattata. It's hard to rate this Pokemon. Like, I always saw it on the early routes of, like, Pokemon Red and Blue and some other games that I have played in my time. Didn't catch it too often, but when I did, it sort of learned some good basic moves like Tackle and Quick Attack and whatnot. It just scrapes in for me in the C tier rank, but only just. Next up on the list is Raticate. Raticate learns some pretty good moves like Hyper Fang and Super Fang. They do quite big loads of damage. Of course, Ash trades his Butterfree to get Eradicate. It just didn't feel right in the anime when Ash done that. Then he got it back, of course, which was good. Yeah, definitely for me, Raticate just sneaks into the B tier for me in terms of power that it has. Next up on the list is Spearow. I remember Spearow, Ash threw a rock, thought it was a Pidgey, and put a big lump on the old Spearo's head, and that led into the first episode, Ash running for his life pretty much, trying to protect his Pikachu. Spearow is on probably the same tier as the Pidgey in terms of the early bird Pokemon that you can catch for me. But it learns, I reckon, a slightly better move than what Pidgey does at the start, which is Peck. So we'll put the Spearow just above the Pidgey there. Next up on the list is Fearow. Now, Fearow for me, with its very unique move and mirror move, puts it into the B tier for me. Decent monster, and very decent Pokemon to have in your team if you are playing the Game Boy games. We see Fearow in a couple episodes, I believe, in Kanto as well. Next up on the list is Ekans. Now, Ekans is part of the Team Rocket team earlier on, Jesse's Pokemon. Ekans has a decent poison move and poison sting, obviously. It just gets into the C tier list for me. Arbok is next. Arbok's got some really good moves in its moveset. Of course, the evolved form of Ekans and Cobra spelled backwards, which is pretty cool. I like how Pokemon did that, by the way. Yeah, for me, it is just going to get into the B tier status for me. It is decent, but it is vulnerable to a lot of other Pokemon on this list and can easily be defeated. Next up on the list is Pikachu. Pikachu is one of my favourites of all time. Of course, it's an iconic Pokemon with Ash's first ever Pokemon. Travels with him throughout all the series as well. Has some very diverse movesets throughout all the shows. But we're rating it based on his Kanto performance. And, of course, how strong it is in, like, Game Boy games and that to use. Yeah, very decent moveset. Like, has Thundershock, Thunderbolt. Can paralyze Pokemon as well. Yeah, Pikachu belongs in the B tier along with Charmander and Squirtle. Next up is Raichu. I remember Raichu being beaten by a Pikachu. Lieutenant Surge evolved as Pikachu into Raichu very early, and it didn't develop as much, and Pikachu took advantage of that. This is Ash's Pikachu for Ash to win the Thunder Badge. Yeah, still a very strong Pokemon in terms of if you do it right in the Game Boy game. Of course, evolves by placing a Thunderstone with Pikachu. And I think Raichu's stronger than obviously Pikachu, and for me, it is going to go into the A tier for me. I quite like Raichu. It's got cool design and everything like that. Sandshrew, a ground type Pokemon, is next on the list. Sandshrew is quite annoying to go up against. He's got like sand attack and stuff like that to lower your accuracy and stuff. Sort of average moves like Scratch and like I think he's got Defense Curl as well. Yeah, it's definitely on the lower end of the C tier list, but it does deserve a place there. It doesn't deserve to be in D or E tier rank, which I had to make categories up for those Pokemon there. Sandslash is next on the list, guys. Like, Sandslash learned some very interesting moves like Swift, Fury Swipes. Decent ground type Pokemon as well. Of course, you can give it the move Dig, Earthquake. Definitely, for me, it is on the B tier. Probably in the middle, I reckon, there. Like, it's got capabilities of fighting a lot of Pokemon on this list. And pretty cool design and everything. And yeah, it's definitely deserving of that place. Nidoran is next on the list. This is the female version of Nidoran. The first gender type Pokemon on this list, which was pretty cool. Nidoran here belongs in the C tier for me. Nidorina is next on this list. A slight improvement on Nidoran. Nidorina learns some really decent moves. Like, I think it learns Double Kick and that, etc. Which is a really decent normal type move. Yeah, it just probably makes it onto the B tier list for me in terms of power and likability. Next up on the list is Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen had some pretty good base set moves, like it had Body Slam, for example. And the one thing that stands out for Nidoqueen, and especially Gen 1 games and whatnot, it could learn so many moves that covered so many types of Pokemon. So if you had a Nidoqueen or even a Nidoking in your team, like if you had taught it the right TMs, it could wipe out a whole team just like that. Nidoqueen for me will go into the A tier. Quite like the Pokemon, cool design, and definitely a deserving place in the A tier rank. Got Nidoran, the male version of the Nidoran type. Yeah, definitely on the same tier as the female version there. Nidorino is next on our list. I think Nidorino is slightly better than Nidorino to have. Slightly better moves it learns, etc. Slightly stronger. Yeah, Nidorino still will fit in the B tier for me. Next up on the list is Nidoking. Now, Nidoking for speedrunners out there is the Pokemon of choice in Pokemon Red/Blue. Just an absolute powerhouse with learning moves like Thrash, can learn like Mega Punch, Mega Kick, I believe. And just strong moves like Horn Drill, if you set it right with an X accuracy, never misses. This Pokemon for me, in terms of strength and that, in Gen 1 is just absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's likable as well. It's definitely an S tier for me. Next up on the list is Clefairy. Clefairy, yeah, it's probably, for me, a D tier. I like the Pokemon. I love the design. I love how cute and that it looks. But in terms of a moveset and that, it's not that strong. It could be useful in some certain situations if it has Metronome, which can be a random move out of nowhere. But yeah, definitely a D tier for me. Next up on the list is Clefable. Of course, you have to use a Moonstone on Clefairy to get it to Clefable. Slight improvement on Clefairy, and Clefable will go into the C tier rank for me. But only just. Like, it has some decent moves, but it's not going to be really used in too many people's teams. It's not too much of a favourite either. Next up, we've got Vulpix. Now, Brock had a Vulpix in the original season. Quite like Vulpix as a Pokemon. It had quite a diverse move set. Good, decent fire type if you managed to get in the game as well. Believe you got it with exchanging coins as well in Celadon City. So Vulpix for me is on the same tier. It's probably not as good as like a Charmander or a Squirtle tier. It's sort of a starting type, fire type. Yeah, definitely upper C tier for me. Next up on this list is Ninetales. Ninetales looks absolutely awesome in my book. Of course, the evolved form of Vulpix. I believe Vulpix needs a Firestone to become a Ninetales, if I'm not mistaken. Ninetales learned some really good fire type moves. And I think you see it in Season 1. I have to watch the season again to be familiar with the series. But yeah, Ninetales on the list for me is an A tier. Next up on this list is Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff, for everyone that has watched the Kanto portion of the Pokemon series, sings with a microphone, puts people to sleep, and then gets offended and pulls out its Sharpie and draws on the faces of the main characters, which I find quite hilarious. But we have to judge this in terms of likability and its sort of moveset. It's got some decent basic moves. It's hard to rate. I'm going to put it on the higher D tier. It's better than Clefable, but not by much, you know. But it's got a very good move in Sing, which can be quite useful in Pokemon battles. Wigglytuff is the next Pokemon to rate on this list. Slightly better than Jigglypuff, of course. And for that reason, it's on the same sort of tier for me as Clefable, like the lower C tier rank. Next up on our list is Zubat. I'm going to put Zubat on the C tier list. It's probably in the mid sort of card for C tier Pokemon. The dreaded going into battles against Zubat was the old supersonic move and confusing your Pokemon. That was its best ability, I reckon. And of course, it had like Leech Life to replenish its health if it did get hit. Very useful. And yeah, that for that reason, it's a C tier. Next up on the list is Golbat, the evolved form of Zubat. I think Golbat's got a very good moveset. It learns a very good move and bite, which can flinch a Pokemon and means it cannot attack effectively. And yeah, gets some of the moves from Zubat as well. And for that reason, it will definitely go into the B tier for me. Sort of in the mid-range as well. Oddish is next on this list. Yeah, not the best of grass-type Pokemon out there. For me, Oddish will go into the D tier, just because of its moveset not being really developed yet. Of course, it gets better as it evolves. Next up on the list is Gloom. Now, Gloom is an evolved form of Oddish. I think Gloom is very useful for like status-type moves that it learns. Of course, it features in an episode where it's Erika's Pokemon, and yeah, it has its own little episode. It's very shy and doesn't really want to get involved in Pokemon battles. It's a tough one for me. It's slightly better than Oddish. It is in sort of the mid to lower C tier rank, and I think that's where it belongs. Next up on our list is Vileplume. And here it's the same moves as Gloom. It's a slight upgrade in terms of its strength and abilities. Of course, it has a decent move, and Acid is a good attacking move. For me, it's not a B tier Pokemon either. I think it's better than Gloom, and it's very much high up on this list in the C tier category. Next up on the list is Paris. Paris is a useful Pokemon to collect along the way. Can learn the ability Cut. It's got decent moves like Scratch. Can learn some status moves as well. Yeah, Paris, definitely a C tier Pokemon for me. It's sort of in the middle there for me. Next up on the list is Parasect. Good, interesting Pokemon. The evolved form of Paris. Yeah, can learn a few more moves, obviously. You can give it TMs and HMs, of course. For that reason alone, it is in the lower B tier range for me. It deserves a spot there. Venonat is the next Pokemon on this list. It's a good Pokemon, I reckon. It learns some Psychic moves. Psychic moves are very strong early Pokemon days. Yeah, Venonat, in terms of its abilities as well, to have status effects and that as well, makes it quite a dangerous Pokemon and a very good Pokemon to invest in if you are playing the Game Boy games. Yeah, I reckon it is definitely a lower B tier rank Pokemon actually. Venomoth is next on the list. Of course, Ash had a few problems against Koga when Koga used his Venomoth in their gym battle. Venomoth is an amazing Pokemon, effectively. Of course, inherits the Psychic move set as well. I quite like this Pokemon, and for that reason alone, I think it is definitely a B tier rank, but it's closing in on the A tier monsters or Pokemon on this list. Next up on this list is Diglett. Diglett is useful for giving the move Dig to, which can evade attacks. Very hard to rate Diglett in terms of on this tier list. Yeah, it's a solid C tier for me. I think Diglett is quite useful. So he's around about here on the list. Dugtrio, pretty much, I think, is an amazing Pokemon. Of course, the evolved form of Diglett. Dodrio for me is a solid B tier Pokemon. It has a very good moveset. It can learn obviously really good moves as well along the way with TMs, and that reason alone it's a B tier. Next up on the list is Meowth. Of course, Meowth is part of Team Rocket in the show, and he's able to talk, which is pretty amazing. Meowth sort of has a basic move set, and it has a very unique move in Payday. But still, with that knowledge in mind, you've got to think Meowth is sort of in the lower C tier ranks. In terms of how strong it is in battles, yeah, probably won't be used in too many teams. Next up on this list is Persian. Now, Persian we see quite often in the original Pokemon series when Giovanni features. Obviously, Persian is Giovanni's pet Pokemon. Persian actually in the game, like Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow we're talking about here, and Kanto, has a very diverse moveset. TMs, it can learn a range of moves from Poison. It can learn water moves and thunder moves, or electric moves for that matter. Yeah, Persian, yeah, definitely, if we were to base it on the show and strength and likability, I would say it just scrapes into B tier. Next up on the list is Psyduck. Now, Psyduck has a few amazing moments in the original Pokemon series, but it does hurt Misty, Psyduck's trainer's head in at times when it is thick as anything. With that reason in mind, Psyduck does belong roughly around the C tier, like the upper ranks, just because of its moveset being really good. Like, it's a water type Pokemon, obviously, that has a few abilities tapping into its psychic powers. So yeah, that reason's C tier. Next up on the list is Golduck. Golduck is an incredible Pokemon, I reckon, evolving from Psyduck. Golduck can learn Hydro Pump as well, so a good Pokemon to have potentially on your team. And of course can learn a few different abilities with TMs and that equipped to it. In terms of rating it in the Kanto series, yeah, I rate it pretty highly in my book. It is definitely for me an A tier based on its strength, likability, and how diverse it can be in a team of 6. Next up on the list is Mankey. Mankey is a pretty cool Pokemon that has sort of martial art type moves, which makes it unique from basically most of the Pokemon on this list. A fighting type Pokemon. I think Mankey is starting to be quite strong in the show as well. Yeah, definitely deserves a B tier ranking. Primeape is next on the list. It is the evolved form of Mankey. I think Primeape is pretty amazing too. Very good fighting type Pokemon in Kanto. It, for me, is high up on the B tier list. It doesn't quite get to A tier. I'm trying to be very selective in my S tier and A tier ranked Pokemon because they deserve placings on that list. But yeah, Primeape is pretty much close to A tier rank. But yeah, for me, he's in that list below. Growlithe is the next Pokemon on the list, a fire type Pokemon. You see Officer Jenny and Growlithe quite often in Kanto. And in some cases, the Team Rocket teams have Growlithe in that as well, I believe. But yeah, we're here to rate it, of course. Growlithe, I think, is a solid B tier entry here. Arcanine is next on the list. He features throughout the opening part of the show before the episode begins. Yeah, very decent Pokemon. Learned some very strong moves. Fire Blast springs to mind as a very powerful fire type move that it inherits. Arcanine, of course, will probably definitely be an A tier Pokemon for me. Very close to S tier. I like the Pokemon. Very cool to have in your team if you can get a Growlithe. And yeah, definitely deserves that place in the A tier rank. Poliwag is next on the list for me. It is a water type Pokemon. Learns Bubble. Not the strongest water type Pokemon going around. It's probably on the same tier as Oddish. It's sort of close to C tier. But yeah, in terms of power and that at this stage of its evolution form, yeah, definitely a D tier rank for me. Next on the list is Poliwhirl. Poliwhirl is a massive improvement on Poliwag. Poliwhirl actually learns some very good moves. And for that reason alone, I think it's a solid B tier, Poliwhirl. Next up on the list is Poliwrath. Of course, you need a Water Stone on Poliwhirl to get to the Poliwrath stage. Poliwhirl and Poliwrath, just to mention, are pretty unique water type Pokemon. They can learn psychic moves. They can learn quite a diverse range of moves as well. Like they can learn, say, Earthquake and that, for example, like ground type moves. Yeah, Poliwrath is definitely on the same tier for me as Arcanine. And very close to that S tier rank status, but not quite, you know. I think we've got to make that S tier rank special on this list. But yeah, very good entry at A tier for Poliwrath. Next up on the list is Abra. Abra only learns Teleport, and for that reason, that is an E tier. It can't attack or anything, but if you want to develop it into its next stages, definitely recommended in the team because its next forms are absolutely amazing. Once you get Abra to Kadabra, things become amazing for this evolution line. Kadabra is a very good psychic type. I used it in a lot of my playthroughs over the years in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Yeah, very, very high up there, B tier for me. Psychic, Psybeam, Psywave, Confusion, strong psychic type monster. Next up on the list is Alakazam. Alakazam, you've got to trade Kadabra to get that evolve for, which is so bizarre. Why on earth would a Pokemon evolve when you trade it to someone else? It bothers me to this day. It should have some sort of stone to evolve it if you're going to go that route, like a Psychic Stone or something. But anyhow, Alakazam for me is a favourite of mine. Very strong Psychic type. Probably the strongest Psychic type in the Kanto region. For that reason alone, it goes into the S tier category for me, and a definite on your team if you're going through the Kanto region in a Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow playthrough. Next up is Machop, the fighting type Pokemon. Machop actually learns some really basic and very good fighting type moves. It is on the same tier as Mankey in terms of a fighting type. Probably slightly better than Mankey, and definitely on the B tier list. Machoke is next on the list. I like the design. He looks really tough. He looks like a wrestler with how he's designed and whatnot. He learned some pretty cool fighting type moves as well. Same rank as Machop, but in the upper tier of B for me. Very likable, and is seen in a lot of games, like, for example, like helping people move items and that around the house, and probably helping them move into homes, etc. So deserving place as a B tier for me. Next up on the list is Marchant. Yeah, with the extra couple of arms, it's a slightly better Pokemon than Machoke, but not by much in terms of its design. Yeah, very good fighting type. Basically has all the fighting type moves with it. Very useful to have a fighting type sort of floating in your team, or in like the Pokemon Center that you have at your disposal. Just for me, it gets into A tier, but not by much. Like, it's not much of an improvement on Machoke, but Machoke was high B tier for me, so definitely Marchant deserves a spot in A tier. Bellsprout is a grass type Pokemon. Slightly better move than Oddish that inherits early on. But for me, it's still D tier. It's still easily disposed of when you put other Pokemon up against it. But it does improve slightly throughout its line. Weepinbell is the evolved form of Bellsprout. Slightly better than Bellsprout. Has a very decent grass set type of moves. Like has its Vine Whip, Razor Leaf, etc. But in terms of comparing it to other grass Pokemon on this list, I think it's one of the weaker ones. And for that reason alone, it is sort of high C tier rank. But nothing much more than that in my book. Victreebel, of course, James's Pokemon for Team Rocket. Victreebel doesn't like James too much and often traps it inside its body. Victreebel has a good set of moves on it. But yeah, in terms of rating it against other grass-type Pokemon, I think you'd go for other options over him. Obviously, you need a Leaf Stone from Weepinbell to get to this stage. Yeah, it will go into the B tier for me. Sort of in the mid-card, probably just better than the starters and Ivysaur. And yeah, that's where I'll put it. Tentacool is next on the list. Interesting Pokemon design for its time, you know, had decent moves, like had poison type moves and a few water type moves here and there. Yeah, definitely Tentacool, probably for me, is high C tier rank. Tentacruel is next on the list. This Pokemon is absolutely vicious. In the show, I think it's whacking into a building and destroying it. So in that term alone, it is very powerful. It can learn some very good TMs in that as well. Has some good moves like Wrap, Poison Sting. It can learn some good water moves. Yeah, Tentacruel probably, for me, is on the cusp of an A tier. And I think it is around this area here, like upper B tier for me. Next up on our list is Geodude. Now, Geodude is a Pokemon in the series that Brock has. Geodude has some really interesting moves, like it can learn like Rock Throw. It's got Tackle. I think it can learn Mega Punch as well, so it gives it that fighting type aspect. Yeah, Geodude for me is a solid B tier. Probably around in here somewhere. Graveler, the evolved form of Geodude. Now, Graveler learns a pretty impressive move in Self-Destruct. Only one of the very few in Kanto, out of the first 151 Pokemon that can learn that move. Tries to take a Pokemon with it. Yeah, a very good Pokemon as well. For me, it is higher B tier. It does deserve a place there, effectively. Golem is next on our list. Another Pokemon in the Game Boy games you have to trade to get, effectively. Golem is slightly better than Graveler. Slightly stronger rock type Pokemon. And for that reason alone, Golem for me is sort of lower A tier, but it does deserve a spot on that list. Ponyta is next on the list. I love this evolution line. I think Ponyta looks awesome, but we're rating it in terms of strength on this tier list. Learns a better moveset, I believe, than Vulpix. That will get it higher on the list for me. Ponyta probably just gets into the B tier for me. Next up on the list is Rapidash. Now, Rapidash is pretty awesome as well. Pretty fast for a Pokemon. Has some very good fire-type moves. Like, in terms of this list, Charizard and Arcanine are better than it. I think it's... on that A-tier rank, I'm going to give Rapidash an A-tier rank. I quite like the Pokemon, and I think it's a deserved spot on that tier. Slowbro. Now, Slowbro is pretty similar to Psyduck in terms of its amazing abilities, but yet it's pretty lazy in my book. And yeah, definitely a C tier rank for Slowbro, but amazing water Pokemon that can learn a few psychic moves. Next up on the list is Slowbro. Slowbro's got some very interesting moves like Amnesia, which increases some of its stats and whatnot. Of course, it's got some psychic abilities as well, got some water moves. Much better than Slowbro, very efficient Pokemon to use in my book. With that reason in mind, it is sort of on the B tier status for me. Magnemite is next on the list, an electric type in the first 151 Pokemon. So we're rating it based on its Kanto abilities. So at the current time of this, we'll say it doesn't have the steel element to it. So with that in mind, it is probably not as good as the other electric Pokemon on this list. I'd go for other options here. Magnemite will definitely fit comfortably in the C tier. Magneton next on the list, the evolved form of Magnemite. Magneton, a slightly better version than Magnemite. So Magneton will fit comfortably in the B tier. Farfetch D, my favourite flying type of the Kanto series. I love the design. I love some of the moves that it has. Of course, it's a flying type. I think it's actually slightly better than Spearow and Pidgey at that stage, if you're comparing those three. But with that in mind, I've got to be completely honest. I think Farfetch is very close to B tier, but in my book, he is C tier. Doduo is next on the list. A bird that can't fly, pretty much. Very interesting design and whatnot. Two-headed Pokemon. Oh, it's for me one of the worst Pokemon in Kanto to probably select. It has a pretty interesting moveset. I'll give it that, but yeah, it's not as bad as the Pokemon in D&E. It's lower C tier for me. Next up on the list is Dodrio. This Pokemon is very, very difficult to rank. It's either lower A tier or high B tier for me. The reason why I'm saying that is because it has a very good move that it learns Tri-Attack, which has a 20% chance of inflicting 3 status on the Pokemon, like I think Paralysis, Burn, and Freeze, from what I can remember. And it can learn moves like Hyper Beam and stuff like that in earlier games. Yeah, I'm gonna put it sort of the upper B rank for me. Next up on the list is Seal. Now, Seal, it's okay. It's got some decent ice moves that it learns at the start of its journey, effectively, when you catch it and whatnot. But yeah, apart from that, I think Seal is sort of the higher C tier rank with the ability to get in B tier rank for me. Dugong is next on this list, guys. Now, Dugong can learn Horn Drill and whatnot. I think Seal can as well. Don't quote me on that. Has a very good range of ice moves. Yeah, the Dugong definitely is solid B tier for me. Sort of the upper tier. Like, it's got some really good moves that it can learn. And, yeah, a Pokemon that you could fit on your team quite easily. Grimer is next on the list. Now, you see Grimer quite a bit when you're battling Team Rocket and their grunts, effectively. Not the strongest Pokemon going around, but it can still be quite annoying on the day with being able to poison other Pokemon. For me, it's a solid C tier. Probably high up on the list. Muck is next on the list. Now, Ash has one of these in the series. Muck's actually quite strong, surprisingly, in games and that throughout the history of Pokemon. Has a very good set of poison-type moves. Good stats as well. Yeah, Muck, for me, is highest B tier. Shelter, for me, is an interesting Pokemon to grade on this list. It can learn some really, really good moves. It can learn things like Self-Destruct and that. If you give it a TM on it, you can give it some really good ice moves. Yeah, in terms of how it goes against other Pokemon, it's really hard to know. I think Shelter, for me, is sort of very much comfortably in the C tier category for me. Cloyster is next on this list. I love Cloyster. I think he's a very cool design. Very underutilized Pokemon. Like, basically a forgotten Pokemon in, like, the Kanto region, effectively. With that in mind, Cloyster, I think, is a solid B tier. very much high up there on the list. Okay, we're on a unique evolution line now. So we've got Ghastly. Ghastly's a ghost type for all of you that don't know. I think Ghastly learned some pretty unique moves as well. Yeah, Ghastly for me, it's definitely B tier for me. Just because other Pokemon will find it very difficult to hit. It's got a few weaknesses, obviously, but yeah, Ghastly for a starting ghost type is definitely a go for in my book. Next up on the list is Haunter. Of course, Ash obtained a Haunter before he battled Sabrina in the series, before Haunter went away for good. Haunter, for me, definitely will go in the higher B tier category. Much better than Ghastly. Pretty much, I think it learns Dream Eater as well, which is an amazing move when a Pokemon's put to sleep, and you can take a huge amount of damage off the Pokemon too. But yeah, definitely B tier for me. One of people's favourites in the show is Gengar, I reckon, like a very iconic ghost type. Gengar, for me, with its range of moves that it has at its disposal, it definitely is an S tier for me. You can't deny how good it is in early teams back in the day. Next up on the list is Onix. Now, Onix is a Pokemon that Brock has in the series of the first early seasons of Pokemon. Onix is very tough to rank. Like, Onix has some glaring weaknesses against certain types of Pokemon. Like, he has a decent base of rock moves. Like, he's very hard to dispose of if you're going for your first badge. On your team, though, I just think he lets you down in terms of his attacks that he inherits and that. I don't think he's... I think he's a deserved mid to lower tier, B tier for me. Drowsy is next on this list. Drowsy has quite a diverse moveset, actually. It can learn Hypnosis, which puts Pokemon to sleep. Of course, it's got, like, Dream Eater. It can learn very decent Psychic moves. Yeah, it's sort of... it's very hard to rank. I'll probably put it in the lower B tier rank for Drowsy. Next up on the list is Hypno. So Hypno is a lot stronger than Drowsy. Pretty similar moveset. Yeah, for me, Hypno is just going to get onto the A tier rank. Krabby is our next Pokemon to rank on this list. Not the strongest water type going round. It has a very unique move, both Krabby and Kingler, with Vice Grip. Got a decent bubble move, but that's about it for Krabby, I think. Yeah, Krabby definitely belongs in C tier for me, probably around here on the list. Kingler, of course, in the Pokemon series is owned by Ash. It learns a pretty powerful move in games like Crab Hammer. Very good power move for its time. Reasonably high accuracy as well. I think it's a decent Pokemon, actually. I think Kingler just gets onto the A tier just because of that move alone. It's a favourite of mine too, so I'm a bit biased towards that A tier rank. It's probably more realistically in the B tier, but yeah, for me on this list, A. Next up on our list is Voltorb. Voltorb just reminds me of a Pokeball with two eyes on it, effectively. Not a unique design by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, decent set of electric type moves that it inherits. Of course, it can learn self-destruct, which is unique for an electric type. Yeah, Voltorb for me. Yeah, in the C tier rank. Electrode, very similar to Voltorb, similar sort of moves it can learn. Just to put this into perspective, I think it's in the lower B tier. Execute is next on the list. It's a pretty decent grass type Pokemon with the ability to, I think, learn Hypnosis as well, which makes it different to all the grass types in this particular series. Execute for me is basically on sort of about here, I think. I think it's about a C tier. Executor definitely has a very unique move in Egg Barrage, I believe it's called. Can learn Solar Beam. A very hard Pokemon to break down. I think it's an Elite Four stages where you see it. And if you're very unfortunate, it could put you away very, very easily. Executor, for me, is definitely right up there in terms of its ability and durability on this list. For me, it's a definite A tier. Cubone's next on our list, guys. Cubone has a very unique move. Only two Pokemon in Kanto that know this move, and that is Boomerang. Can learn some very interesting moves as well. Can learn like Earthquake, Dig, etc. And that gives us a very decent Pokemon to rank, actually. It for me, is a solid B tier. Marowak, one of my all-time favorites from this series. I love the episode that he features in with the character of that particular episode goes around and gets badges with his Marowak, and it's shown to be a very strong Pokemon, very well trained, etc. As I've mentioned as well, it's got similar moves that can learn as Cubone. For me, actually, the Marowak, just because of what it can learn, it is very much an A tier for me as well. It's awesome, unique design, very unique move, and yeah, deserve a place in the A tier for me. I'm going to put these two together, guys. I love these two Pokemon coming up. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, based off Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Paying homage to them. Very unique fighting type Pokemon. Of course, you could choose one of them after completing the dojo in Saffron City. Both of these guys are very high up on the list. I think potentially both of them, just due to their abilities alone. I think Hitmonlee is definitely B tier, but I think Hitmonchan with the ability to learn like Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, etc., makes it just that little bit better than Hitmonlee. So yeah, definitely they deserve high places on this list. Next up on the list is Lickitung. I'm not a huge fan of Lickitung, to be honest, but it has some very interesting moves. Yeah, it for me is a Pokemon owned by Team Rocket. It's okay. It will fit on the B tier for me, like the very lower end of B tier. Coughing is next on our list. Coughing is a Pokemon that James starts off with Team Rocket. Coughing has some very unique moves, and yeah, for that reason alone, it's a solid C tier for me. Wheezing is a Pokemon James gets when it evolves from Coughing. Now, Wheezing has the ability to self-destruct, which makes it a very dangerous Pokemon to deal with. Has a decent array of moves in that as well. Wheezing for me is a solid B tier monster. Rhyhorn is next on this list. Rhyhorn is a very good Pokemon if you can find it and catch it, because it can learn like Horn Drill. Very good ground type Pokemon, in fact. It can learn Earthquake, etc. Like, starting off, I think Rhyhorn is definitely in the B tier, like the higher end of B tier, just so how strong it is. Rhydon. Now, does Rhydon get to the S tier rank for me, or is it very high up there in terms of an A tier? Very strong Pokemon in Kanto. We will give it that. Can learn some reasonable moves. Horn Drill being one of the strongest moves in the game that it can learn, just instantly gives it status there of either A or S. Ooh, it's a very hard one. But for me, it just falls below Nidoking, because Nidoking can obviously learn Horn Drill on that as well. And if Nidoking and Rhydon were to have a fight, I think Nidoking, with its diverse range of skills, could probably topple Rhydon. So just in the A tier for me, but very close consideration. For anyone that does this, definitely could fit in the S tier. Chansey, often seen in a Pokemon Center and whatnot. Not sort of a Pokemon you'd use in battles. It's got a lot of hit points. It can recover easily with like soft boiled, etc. Yeah, probably if you're having it on your Pokemon team, it's a B tier rank because of its health and its ability to stall, maybe to heal up all your other Pokemon and stuff. It has a decent couple of moves that can do a bit of damage in its time. But yeah, around that B tier rank for Chansey. Tangela is next on the list. A Pokemon, of course, that is in Erica's teams usually when you go into a Pokemon battle with her, like a gym battle, that is. I think Tangela needed some evolution pass here. I think Tangela is a solid grass type Pokemon. It's probably slightly better than Bulbasaur, the starter Pokemon, and Weepinbell on that list. For me, Tangela has some interesting moves that it can learn as well. I think I'll be nice to it. I think I'll give it a B tier rank. Kangaskhan is next on the list. He is very evasive in the old Safari Zone. Whenever you'd throw a rock, he usually would flee or run away. In terms of its design, and that looks pretty strong, pretty buff. He does have a reasonable repertoire of things that he can learn. Yeah, I'll give Kangaskhan a solid B tier. Like, he's very much sort of up there in terms of sort of decent Pokemon to use. Horsey is a Pokemon that Misty owns in the Pokemon series. Yeah, decent amount of water type moves, can learn a few moves as well. Yeah, Horsey is definitely a C tier. It's sort of around about here for me. Seadra, the evolved form of Horsey. Seadra is more of an aggressive type Pokemon. Horsey's sort of passive and still good and all, but I think Seadra is just the complete opposite of Horsey in terms of its abilities. Can learn a few ice moves here and there. It's got the standard water type moves. It's a solid B tier for me. It's a good Pokemon to have in a team. Goldeen is next on the list. I believe Misty owned one of these Pokemon as well. I have to go watch the series again. But anyhow, Goldeen, for me, is a C tier. Now, Seeking by Design, the next Pokemon on the list, may come across as a Pokemon that, yeah, you wouldn't think about. But boy, it can learn some good moves. Like, Horn Drill, for one, as mentioned, is a powerful move back in these times. It can learn Hyper Beam. This Pokemon is very underrated. It was amazing because I've had to do a bit of homework on some of these Pokemon, what sort of moves and that they can learn. And this can learn Blizzard and everything in Gen 1. It's actually a very surprisingly, for me, I never thought I'd see this, but Seeking is an A tier Pokemon. It has a few glaring weaknesses. Of course, water are very susceptible against Thunder types and a few other types of Pokemon in the series. But just with what Seeking can learn, I was just blown away. And I think it's an A tier for me. Okay, Staryu. Misty owns a Staryu, of course. Staryu has some decent moves, like it can learn Swift, basic water type moves. Staryu, for me, is a solid B tier. Like, it's a good Pokemon. It can learn a few psychic moves and that there. And we'll rate Starmie at the same time. Starmie can learn some powerful water type moves like Bubble Beam. Can it learn Hydro Pump? I'm not 100% sure. Can definitely learn some psychic type moves. And for me, definitely is an A tier ranked Pokemon for me. Mr. Mime, a unique psychic type monster. Of course, and sort of a maid for Ash's mum in the series. Often doing cleaning in that. It's actually a really strong Pokemon. You can trade for it, of course, in the first gen games. Good psychic abilities. Yeah, Mr. Mime, in terms of where you'd grade it, would be in the B tier rank. One of my favourite Pokemon in terms of design is next up on this list, Slifer. Very much the best bug type Pokemon in this season in my book. It grades higher than all the bugs. It is definitely an A tier for me, just in terms of design, how strong it looks in the anime, learn some good moves and whatnot, strong Pokemon, and contender to have in your teams and that in Game Boy games, if you can get one. Next up on the list is Jinx. Now, Jinx is a very unique Pokemon, a Psychic Ice type. Very, very good, actually. Got some very unique moves as well, like Sweet Kiss, I think causes confusion. Can learn Psychic and, like, basic Ice type moves. Yeah, Jinx for me definitely does belong in that higher B tier, very close to A tier for me. Probably in most people's eyes an A tier, but Jinx for me fits in that B tier category. Electabuzz is next on the list. Electabuzz learns basically all the Thunder type moves. Yeah, just a decent Electric type Pokemon that you can rely on. We see it, I think, in the show as well. Yeah, Electabuzz is in the same sort of range as Jinx, I think. Just a very good, solid Electric type. Magmar is next on the list. I remember Blaine's Magmar and Ash's Charizard going at it in that epic struggle. One of the best fights ever in a Pokemon episode that I've seen. When Charizard just edges Magmar when he does the seismic toss move. Magmar has access to really good moves, like he's got Flamethrower. He can do other fire type moves as well. Yeah, Magmar for me definitely fits in the A tier status. Pinsir is next on the list. It has an interesting moveset. It learns a move called Guillotine. Only a 30% accuracy though, but if it manages to hit the opponent with Guillotine, it makes the Pokemon instantly faint. For that alone, it makes it a very dangerous prospect to go up against. In terms of its other moves though, it's sort of got basic bug moves and other little moves it can learn here and there. It is handy to have in a team. I think it's caught in the Safari Zone in the games as well. Yeah, like for me, Pinsir is sort of in the mid to lower tier of B for me. Tauros is next on our list. Ash catches 30 of these in the Safari Zone, an episode that we didn't get to see in the West due to the Safari Zone owner, I think, having guns. And they were pointing towards like Ash, Misty, and Bright. Of course, you couldn't have that in the kids' program. That's a wee bit of backstory on him. Tauros, yeah, he's okay. He's definitely B tier for me. He's used in Ash's team here and there, but after the Orange Islands, I don't think he really uses them anymore. Okay, and next E tier ranked monster, Magikarp. Magikarp, of course, James buys off someone on the boat in the early parts of Pokemon Season 1. And James thinks he's invaluable. If he treated Magikarp a lot better, imagine if Gyarados was under James's control and liked his owner. But yeah, Magikarp for me is an E tier monster. Only really learns Splash, and Splash we all know does nothing. We go from Magikarp to Gyarados. Gyarados is such a fearsome monster. Like, can learn Dragon Rage. It's got some very powerful moves. Like, I think it can learn Hydro Pump. Like, all the water moves, you name it, it can get it. Yeah, Gyarados for me is an A tier monster. Probably on the cusp of making that S tier rank. Powerful. Like, in the episode where Ash and they get out of the boat and whatnot when it's capsized and whatnot, and when Magikarp evolved, Gyarados pretty much nearly kills them effectively. But yeah, Gyarados definitely an A tier rank for me. I like Lapras. Lapras is cool. It's a sort of a transport type Pokemon for Ash and the gang when they go around the Orange Islands and whatnot. Lapras actually has a decent array of moves. It can learn a few ice moves, water type moves, and I believe some other moves as well if I had a look at what it could do. Has a lot of HP usually. It's a solid high tier B for me. Next up on the list is Ditto. Now, Ditto is an interesting Pokemon with the ability to transform to any Pokemon on this list. So you can get some very interesting matchups with Ditto in any situation. Like, one of the unique Pokemon in the series. Ditto, for me, based on the fact that it transforms into the other Pokemon, it's still probably Oh, it's hard. I'll put it in the C tier rank, just because Ditto, when it goes up against, like, say for example it goes up against one of the better Pokemon, say Magmar here. Like, Magmar's not going to take too much damage from Ditto due to the fact Ditto's using fire-based moves. You got to put that into consideration. And say for example it's going up against Chansey, for example, like, it's going to be a very slow battle. Like, Ditto, I wouldn't put in your team if I had the choice. Next up is Gary Oak's starter and Eevee. I like the design of Eevee. I think it looks cute and whatnot. Yeah, it's a C tier starter in terms of it belongs where Bulbasaur is. But at the end of the day, Eevee has a very unique evolution line depending on what you do. Next up, to expand on Eevee here, Eevee needs a Water Stone to evolve into Vaporeon, Thunderstone to evolve into Jolteon, and Firestone to evolve into Flareon. All these Pokemon learn, like, Vaporeon learns strong Water type moves, Jolteon strong Thunder type moves, and Flareon strong Fire type moves. It's pretty cool that Eevee can go into these evolution forms. They are all solid B tiers for me. They are very cool to use and very easy to obtain in the early generation games effectively as well. Next up on this list is Porygon. Now, Porygon is famous in the show, effectively in Japan, for its flashing lights and whatnot, and a lot of kids were having epileptic fits because of it, and we didn't get to see the episode in the West. Porygon has a very unique base set moves and that it learns. I'll go over some of these very quickly. Okay, Porygon learns two moves at level 1 called Conversion and Sharpen, which is the only Pokemon that can learn those moves. It can learn some very decent psychic moves. It can learn Tri-Attack as well. Yeah, Porygon for me definitely is sort of slightly better than all the C tier ranked Pokemon. It for me is sort of just in here quite nicely in the B tier rank. Omanyte is next on our list. A unique Pokemon, by the way, like obtained by first of all getting its fossil and then going to Cinnabar Island and giving it to a guy, and then you go back and you get one effectively. Yeah, it can learn a decent poison move and toxic. Also has access to really decent water type moves. For me, it's a solid B tier. And for that matter, Omastar is around about the same for me. It's a higher B tier. Similar move set, and yeah, pretty unique way of getting first of all the fossil Omanyte and then into Omastar. Kabuto is another fossil Pokemon that you could obtain on your journey in the original games. Of course, you go to Cinnabar Island, same process. Kabuto actually learns a lot stronger moves, I believe, than Omanyte. And for that reason alone, with the ability to learn like Hydro Pump, etc., before you go to Kabutops, obviously, gives it a higher ranking. I'll give it a B tier ranking. Kabutops is one of my favourites in terms of design in this series. Yeah, it can learn a diverse range of like water type moves, can learn things like Sword Stance, which can increase its stats, can learn Slash. Of course, it inherits the moves from Kabuto that it learned. Kabutops for me is better than Omastar, obviously, in my opinion. Pretty much it deserves a place in the A tier for me. Next up on this list is Aerodactyl. Now, Aerodactyl, I believe, is in Lance's team in the Elite Four. Aerodactyl can learn, like, Fire Blast, for example. It can learn Hyper Beam. That is a very scary Pokemon to face. If you can get one in your team, it'd be pretty darn amazing just because of its diversity in terms of having moves in different that cover different types. Yeah, definitely an A tier rank for me, Aerodactyl. He's very close for me also to reaching that S tier status, but not quite. Good old Snorlax is next on the list. The whole frustration when you wanted to go to a new place in the game and you had to get a poker flute because Snorlax was blocking the way. In the show, Snorlax is obviously caught by Ash, and Snorlax has his moments where he's quite lazy and falls asleep. and of course, when he gets really annoyed, he can be quite devastating. He's got good moves like Body Slam. He can use Rest to recover all his HP. Yeah, Snorlax for me, just based on his HP and that and whatnot, he's probably very high up B tier for me. Okay, I've got a bit of a decision to make here. I'm going to grade all these legendary birds together. So we've got Articuno first, Ice type, Zapdos the Thunder type, and Moltres the Fire type. Oh, it's a hard one. I think Articuno and Zapdos are better than Moltres. I believe they are both S tiers for me. I think Moltres is slightly weaker than its legendary bird counterparts, and I think it's very high up there, A tier rank for me. But all the three legendary birds, just have notes, they have access to the best moves in the game, effectively. But yeah, that's where I'd rate them on my list. Next up on our list is Dratini. Dratini, of course, caught in the Safari Zone in the games. Dratini starts off, like in its evolution line, as a weaker dragon type, but it's got access to a few decent moves. It's a solid C tier for me. Next up on the list is Dragonair. Dragonair, for me, learns some really amazing moves like Dragon Rage. I believe it can learn Ice Beam, etc. And like the dragon types in Pokemon at this stage are really strong. I'll give this an A tier status. Dragonite's definitely an S tier Pokemon, just because of what Dragonite can do. Of course, it's one of Lance's final Pokemon, and he's very hard to beat as well. And in other games, like Lance has a couple of Dragonites, and you've got to have the right sort of Pokemon to match up against Dragonite, whereas Dragonite's got access to some really strong moves. I believe it's got Hyper Beam in its repertoire, like it can learn some Thunder or Electric type moves. Yeah, Dragonite for me is definitely S tier. Next up on the list is Mewtwo. Mewtwo is definitely an S tier. Like, he's just shown in the show to be powerful. Just instantly makes Pokemon faint just because of its psychic powers. Giovanni tries to take control of Mewtwo. Yeah, definitely an S tier. Like, Mewtwo is undisputed one of the best Pokemon in Kanto. Mew is next on the list. Mew is very similar to Mewtwo. One of my all-time favorites as well. And definitely an S tier as well. So that brings an end to my list, guys. Do you agree with my list? I'm sure there's a lot of people with opinions in that out there. But I have a really reasonable amount of knowledge in Kanto. Not so much in the other series, but I did enjoy compiling this list. Make sure you share this with a friend. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you again next time with more tier list stuff.